Today I'm catching up with Dr. Jason Tanner, who'll explain the vital role farm seaweed will play in Australian fisheries. With the support of FRDC, the South Australian Research and Development Institute and Commercial Participant Research Project will ascertain the value of farm seaweed in a 3-year study. The testing will be carried out using the extensive southern bluefin tuna and kingfish aquaculture farms of the Spencer Gulf. So Jason, how will farm seaweed aid in the environmental impact of farm fish?
As part of farming finfish, you obviously need to feed them, and that results in waste nutrients going into the water column and eventually into the environment. By farming seaweeds, the seaweeds actually take up some or potentially all of those waste nutrients, depending on how much you're farming, and therefore prevent them from having an adverse environmental impact. So at current levels of finfish production here in South Australia, it appears that we're not having very much impact, but the forecast is for production to increase, and so we want to take a proactive approach and actually start taking out nutrients before they become a problem.
Before the trial comes some very intensive research. From the Southern Seas Ecology Laboratory and the University of Adelaide will be surveying potential seaweed varieties to not only withstand the 2 to 3 metre seas of the Great Australian Bight, they must also have the desired nutritional qualities as well.
Seaweed cultivation can be quite simple or quite complex depending on what species you use. At the very simplest, some species reproduce vegetatively. So that means if you just take a branch off, so if we took something like this, you could just thread it into a rope, hang it out in the sea, and that would eventually grow and become a much larger plant. You can then just rip that off and leave a bit behind and it'll grow again, and you've got your harvest.
And how will phase 2 of the project work?
Phase 2 of the project is to actually bring those species that we identify into the laboratory and start working out how do we produce them. You know, do we produce them sexually? Do we use vegetative means? What sort of triggers force them to reproduce? What conditions they actually survive and grow best under? So do they prefer 15-degree water? Do they prefer 12-degree water? What sort of nutrient levels do they like? What light levels do they like? Which influences what depth we farm them at. So looking at all those environmental factors that influence how that seaweed reproduces and grows. Once we've got a handle on that, we'll move to phase 3, which is actually putting seeded seaweeds out into the ocean in close proximity to some of the finfish cages to see how they actually handle the environmental conditions out in the ocean.
And Jason, what will the benefits be?
Essentially, this project to try and start cultivating seaweeds as an aquaculture industry has got 2 major benefits. It's got the environmental benefit in that we can, if successful, we can actually reduce nutrient inputs associated with finfish farming, but it's also got the economic benefit in that it gives the farmers an additional source of revenue, which can lead to greater profits and increased employment, particularly in rural areas. So we're hoping that the project is actually a win-win. It's a win for the environment and a win for the farmers.
Who would have thought seaweed would play such a vital role in the sustainability of farm finfish off our coast?